did it my way. Regrets? I have a few.
Okay, I'm ready.
But then again,
I want this all to play in our recording.
too few to mention.
Welcome back to a monumental episode. We are in our last recording before Naomi moves.
We are in the last recording of the Guy family estate. The mansion from which we have recorded, the illustrious apartment building, the stately Wayne Manor from which we started our business. And now Naomi is throwing it all away to go to medical school.
Not even going to medical school.
Not even going to medical school? It makes it even worse. Here I thought you were becoming a doctor.
No.
Just becoming like a public health nerd or something.
Yeah, basically.
That's so disappointing. Well, welcome back.
To a very empty house.
To a very empty, echoey house. If you hear echoes in our recording, we did our best, but we also have no carpets or wall tapestries.
There's nothing in this house right now except for all of my earthly belongings in one room.
We should have stacked all the earthly belongings around us. Have like a security bubble.
We should have sat right there.
We should have sat in the corner right next to Naomi's shelving units.
Yeah.
It's a little tragic, Naomi. Not gonna lie.
It is.
Like,
it's an end of an era.
We're not ending the podcast. I mean, we might next week. I don't know. Things can change. But
next week we're done.
Yeah, we will no longer be having recording sessions.
It's gonna drive you insane to not finish Why Women Deserve Less.
No, we're finishing that.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. We can't just end the podcast next week.
Oh, yeah. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate you looking out for your brother's insanity.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful, stately Wayne Manor, we appreciate you. You've been great. Besides all of the audio issues you've given us and will probably curse us with in this episode, moving on to bigger and better things. I mean, I guess we can talk about this. We're planning on using like a somewhat sophisticated podcast recording app because we don't spend enough money per month on this already.
Not nearly.
Yeah, it records each individual feed. You can inject in like video and audio.
Yeah.
So I can have like a soundboard where I just like play a toilet flushing sound whenever I make a joke. Because that's really what I want to do. I want to be a shock jock. I want to be a radio DJ.
Joel is calling that he has not appealed to yet.
Yeah, it's true. Naomi, we have a drink to try today.
Yeah. Naomi doesn't have cups in her house, so we will be awkwardly sharing this. It's called Jones Cane Sugar Soda. It's the berry lemonade soda. Here you go. Oh, I was also going to waterfall. Are we both waterfalling? Is this because we don't trust germs?
Probably.
Okay.
This tastes like drinking neon. It tastes like if you like cracked open like a glowing sign. I mean, this thing looks like toxic waste.
Ew.
It's blue.
I don't like it.
I guess it's supposed to be like blue raspberry or something.
It tastes like those ices that you get
at
the movie theater. It tastes like that, but without the ice.
You know how nuclear reactors have like unnaturally clear water to cool them down?
Yeah.
This is like what that tastes like.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically like the entire TV series Chernobyl going off in our mouths right now. I am probably permanently sterile as a result of consuming this beverage. I would not wish this upon anyone.
Damn,
you're welcome to finish the rest.
sterile.
Go ahead.
Damn.
Naomi, I wanted to get together today to talk about the end of one era and the beginning of another.
Okay.
And the beginning of this new era is all the exciting changes happening in the world of dating.
Mm.
We discussed some of the changes at the beginning of 2023, and now there's new stuff. And that should shock and terrify you because we're a podcast about dating culture.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of anything big happening in the world of dating?
I obviously know about the things that we've already talked about. Not many people are dating. Not many people are having kids. If they are dating, it's like not very casual just because of the state of reproductive rights in this country.
Is great, 100%. Not a doubt in my mind. Yeah. We are recording this in January 2022, by the way. So
Shut up.
actually, I don't even know if that's far enough.
No. And I would say that's about the extent of what I know. I know dating's getting really freaking weird when it comes to politics, though.
That's accurate. I think we'll touch a little bit upon that today. I don't really have a lot of information about this, but I think we're in this new kind of Wild West when it comes to AI and dating. Not only are there some like really weird apps out there that are like Replica, the online girlfriend, where you can download an app and it'll pretend to be a adult human female. I hope adult human female. But
You hope adult, period.
I hope adult, human, female, not so. But yeah, people are trying to replace, I think, a very real void in their lives with digital instruments, and that has interesting implications because the digital devices, the digital programs are not designed to talk back to them.
Yeah.
They're not designed to have opinions. They're designed to just agree and make you feel good, which is probably not a great way to learn how to conduct yourself in a relationship.
Yeah.
The other fun thing that I'm seeing is a lot of AI tools to create nudes of basically everyone. And those are becoming frighteningly common. I did a little research on this yesterday, and if you type in undress app, you get like 50,000 results for apps that you can put in people's images and they'll like produce nudes. And Google's just like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to advertise for this. This doesn't have any implications for like human privacy. So that's really nice. It's really good that capitalism is getting all in on it. It's good that companies like Adobe are only leaning further and further into generative AI.
Yeah.
I'm highly skeptical of AI in the sense that like, I think a lot of companies misunderstand what the technology can do and are rapidly rushing to put inferior quality versions of humans into their corporate ranks. But I also think there are certain things like Photoshop where like having AI will be very useful for basic things like photo editing. And so I think that like similar to other inventions like cryptocurrency and the blockchain and NFT, there's a very real application, but it's just like 1.001% of what everyone's claiming right now. It is not going to like revolutionize the world in the way people are talking about. It's not going to write and script and animate entire films anytime soon. And if it does, they will be very, very low quality. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. World of AI, world of everything the internet is doing to our brains.
It's deep faking, isn't that the term?
Deep faking, yes.
Yeah, because it came out a couple years ago. When people were looking to make porn out of like celebrity porn, and that became a huge issue.
See, I feel cheated because I came up with an idea a couple of years ago for a porn company that would shoot scenes of like people of all like varying body types and like ethnicities and ages, mostly like older white men though. And the reason you do all this was you'd hire like anonymous actors and, you know, pay them once for one session and then never speak to them again. And then you'd use deep faking to blackmail people by like projecting their faces over it. And I feel that someone stole my idea and now I want money. And I am 100% certain that like there will be like candidate sex tapes made for this upcoming election, 2024 presidential election. Maybe not even the presidential election. I'm sure a lot of like local races like House of Representatives and Senate and whatnot, there'll be like, you know, surreptitious leaks of like people's butts or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is definitely going to be weaponized and it's definitely going to destroy people's very limited faith in media, which is already at all-time lows and now is going to find even new lows. We thought we'd reached a floor and no, we just broke right through. So Naomi, I do have more concrete things to talk about, and one of them is the rise of 2 new dating apps that I wanted your take on.
Okay.
Because I think these are kind of fresh perspectives on how to approach the very complicated problems of dating online. So let's start with the first one. So SanFranciscoGate.com had an article on June 25th of this year by Dan Gentile. A new dating app launched in San Francisco, and 6,000 have already signed on. I mean, Tinder has 10 million users. That's not a crazy amount, but growth is real. So the article says, if you've waited outside Sight Glass Coffee on Divisadero Street in the past few weeks, or walked almost any neighborhood in San Francisco, odds are that you noticed some flyers for a new dating app called Soon. There's a good chance they were put there by Corey Tyler. Boy, I really butchered that. Cora Kyler. Cora Kyler, the 27-year-old co-founder. Kyler, who recently got her doctorate in math from UC Berkeley, founded Soon 4 months ago alongside her best friend, Alina Titova, a 27-year-old who handles design duties. The goal was to address two of the biggest problems in online dating: messages that go nowhere and disappointing first impressions. I think those are big problems in online dating.
Okay.
The app was launched on Valentine's Day and is currently only operational in San Francisco. It has attracted 6,000 users locally, and they plan to expand to San Jose and Palo Alto soon. Those who spent any significant amount of time on the apps will be familiar with the most common pitfalls of online dating, some of which simply can't be avoided, like men proudly displaying half-alive fish. But the Soon team hopes its distinguishing feature will cut out at least some of the malaise of swiping. Like on Tinder and Bumble, you upload photos, answer a couple of prompts, and then get to swiping. The main differentiating premise is that after matching with a potential date, the first message you send is an invitation to meet up. The hypothesis here is that the amount of data you can get on someone in a split second from an in-person interaction is far greater than what you can infer if you had, say, an AI trained on all their browsing history. To help remove friction, users fill out a Calendly-style availability schedule. Calendly is a scheduling app where you can chart out times you're available, and then it compares to other people in your team, and must pick from a curated list of 100 San Francisco spots, mostly bars, coffee shops, and parks. Restaurants are notably absent. There's no dinner. That is way too much of a commitment for the first date, Kyler says. We call it a zero-width date. It is a vibe check, mostly coffee or a drink. While jumping to an in-person meetup immediately might seem like a big commitment, the app's second major distinguishing feature is aimed to further weed out incompatible matches. Almost everyone who's been on a first date has experienced the phenomenon of meh at first sight, in which it only takes a split second to realize you're about to waste the next 2 hours of your life. That's why Soon developed a feature called Glimpse. Users are given a prompt like a childhood story that captures who I am now, and then asked to record a 10-second video clip of themselves. Glimpses are only visible once a match is made, the theory being that in a short clip of a person actually talking about themselves is much more valuable than 1,000 awkward messages debating possibly meeting one day for happy hour. Some other unique elements of Soon include a limit on swipes per day, currently 12, and access to in-person blind date mixers attended by 50 to 100 people. After a date, the app also encourages users to fill out a journal entry about the experience, which is analyzed to find better potential matches in the future. So there is a barrier of entry to Soon. Users are all screened before receiving access. The parameters are primarily based on age and industry, which I find a little weird, to ensure that there's a large enough pool of potential matches. 10,000 people approximately have downloaded the app as of June. 6,000 made the cut, so they're not just letting everyone in. And so far, I don't know how, but the company has spent nearly $1 million on developing this, which I don't know if that's like the cost of paying people in San Francisco or software is just that expensive.
Okay.
I didn't realize apps are so expensive. The app is currently free to download, but the team does have some unique plans for monetization. I think that's important because you can't run your free dating app forever. You have to come up with ways to monetize that hopefully don't destroy human relationships forever.
Yeah.
So what they plan to do, and I think it's quite clever, is they hope to partner with a curated list of bars and restaurants to take a small percentage of sales from Soon dates. Apparently in the last week, 400 dates were facilitated through the app. So, at $10 for coffee, $15 for coffee, a small percentage of that could add up pretty quickly. There are also plans for something called relationship mode, in which the couples meet on the app can essentially contribute to a shared date fund to be used for future outings, of which Soon will take a small percentage. As for the overall vibe of the app, their feedback is that the immediate meetup element has not led to a hookup mentality. Rather, they find it is the opposite. Naomi, what do we think about Soon?
Okay, so I don't think it's the worst idea, but I don't think it's the best idea.
Okay.
The thing that makes me feel comfortable about being on dating apps is that I get to make that final decision of, okay, let's go do something.
Yeah.
I would prefer for my app not to make that decision for me.
That's fair.
The next thing is, how do they make sure that people that are using this app are safe? Because a big thing for me as a woman in online dating is safety. If this guy's being creepy, I want to find out and before I go on a date. That's what I appreciated about the video chatting feature on some dating apps. Is okay, if I'm not okay with giving him my socials or my phone number yet, that's a great way to meet him without actually meeting him.
It sounds like they have some ability to filter people. I don't know if there's any like California regulations about like doing background checks on users. I mean, that seems like something they could fold in at a later date if it becomes a problem. I agree with you that safety is a concern, but I do think having a curated list makes it even easier to like enforce safety, right? Like if you're not meeting people at random bars, but instead meeting people at like specific locations where the staff knows that there's like dates going on, it seems a little bit easier for someone to be like, hey, the vibe of this date is off and I want to leave. And the staff can be assisting with that, or the staff can like notice if there's one guy who's like bringing in 50 women a week or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I really like about it, and the reason I thought this kind of stood out, was the big missing piece, I think, of a lot of modern dating apps is there's no real push to meet up in person. There have been attempts of different apps, like I think Tinder has like cocktail hours and whatnot, but like they're very generic where it's like anyone in the community can come. So then it just becomes a sausage party where, you know, a bunch of men come and grill sausage.
Yeah.
My thinking that having individual experiences for people and giving, you know, them an option of, you know, I like coffee, I like parks, I like, you know, getting a bagel or whatever, encourages the type of behavior that's conducive to like developing the skills necessary to meet people and have like good human reactions. I just don't know how easily it can scale. I think this is very difficult to bring to other cities because you need to kind of have intimate knowledge of, you know, the cool stuff to do in the community. If you're in Phoenix, for instance, it's like, well, you can't go outside half the year.
Yeah.
So, you know, what are some of the activities you can do with people? I think San Francisco also is a little more unique insofar as it has okay public transportation and is a little more walkable compared to cities like Phoenix where you kind of need a vehicle and meeting up with people who live on the other side of town might be difficult.
Yeah.
I think there's a strong framework here.
I don't think it's been executed well, though. That's my personal.
$1 million for 6,000 people. Boy, that's expensive.
Yeah.
I do also think it's good that the revenue model is not based upon like having users pay more for preferential treatment. I think that's something dating apps have struggled with, where like they're trying to pair people up based off of like what the algorithm thinks is good for them, but also you can just cut in line if you pay them money. And I think, you know, relying upon outside businesses is probably a better call. I will say this, the name of the app is absolute garbage. I type in soon, and the first thing I get is a company that does fully automated crypto investing. There's also a company that does workforce management software. There's also a skincare company. There's also a circus company called Soon. Like I have to scroll through a lot of different companies called Soon before I get anywhere and find the app. So I think they really need to change it, come up with something that's a little more memorable, something. But I'm going to follow this one. I think there's something to this, and I think some tweaks could make it a bit better. Let's talk about the second one, and that is an article from Axios.com. Sorry, this is not about an article. This is an article covering the app. The app was covered in an article by Axios.com on July 7th of this year. The article was written by Catherine Varn and was titled New Dating App Weaver Launches in Tampa Bay. Driving the news, Weaver launched last month exclusively in Tampa, in areas within a 60-mile radius, roughly between Sarasota and Brooksville and Clearwater to Winter Haven. I don't know what any of that means. The intrigue, the thing that makes it different, and the founder says that their app is different from other apps like Hinge because it connects users via their core values, such as religion and views on money. So other apps muddy the water because they have a lot of personality and interest-focused questions, right? You log on to OkCupid, you can answer hundreds, if not thousands of different questions. And yes, you can like technically rank how important the questions are to you, but at a certain point, it's like you're answering questions and not really getting to the heart of what you're looking for in a relationship. Like most of the things like they're asking are like, do you like horror movies or romance, right? Like they're preferences, but they're not integral to like whether or not you're going to have a good connection with someone.
Yeah.
So Weaver instead has 26 pillar questions split into 5 categories: religion, politics, life attitudes, money, and emotional maturity. Users answer the questions for themselves and indicate what answers would be acceptable from potential matches and which answers would be considered red flags or deal breakers. Then as the user is browsing profiles, a banner will flash at the top indicating if that person's profile triggered a red flag or deal breaker. That's helpful. From there, the user can peruse the rest of the potential matches' answers. You can also add photos in a bio, similar to Tinder and Bumble. The reality is that more couples are meeting online. So, like this approach, a sociologist from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, argues is like a really good one. People with similar values, especially religious and political views, and desire for or not for children, are more likely to get and stay together in long-term relationships. That said, this sociologist, Ariel Kupperberg, says that you may end up limiting yourself a bit too much. Having a long list of what you're looking for in another person could cut off potential matches, and she considers dating to be such a shit show that she would just use all the apps if she was dating. She's like, why would I limit myself to one in particular? Which I can sort of understand, but also like the time commitment of having to balance 15 different apps just gets annoying after a while.
Yeah.
So the designer of this app, Weaver, relied on her background in user experience design, interest in relationship studies, and other experiences using dating apps. So the free version of the app is currently quite limited because I don't think the pool is particularly large. The free version allows people to see up to 3 profiles a day. For around $15 a month, users can see up to 15 profiles a day. More than 100 users have signed up since it launched back in late June, and she's hoping to hit 500 by the end of the month. What do we think?
I would say that this is a good concept. I like it, but it's a weird place to launch.
Tampa, man.
Florida's a weird place to launch this because I feel like in this political climate, a lot of people are flocking to Florida and Texas. And you're only going to get, like, the vast majority of the people that are on this app are going to be of a certain certain political value.
That's an interesting point. It's kind of the opposite problem of the right stuff, where the right stuff is like you're a conservative in like very liberal areas trying to meet other conservatives.
Yeah.
And here it's like, well, it's all primarily conservative or conservative leaning people. Why would you answer these questions? What's the point of having an app? I think this is useful, especially in larger cities, to effectively weed out people who are like incompatible with you. I don't think that like someone being a different religion than you is necessarily a deal breaker, but I do think for a lot of people it can be. And so being able to like represent how important that is to you at like the highest level of your dating experience seems like something that's super good. I also think it focuses in on kind of the big questions people care about, again, on like OkCupid. Like at a certain point, you're just answering questions on OkCupid to answer questions. It doesn't improve your accuracy of matches. If anything, it just makes it less likely you're going to find someone who's like wholly compatible with you. I do think the launch is maybe a bit slow. Maybe they could have done a better job to bring it to more people.
Yeah.
I think the big issue is these apps run into this problem where they don't have a lot of resources until they get big, but they can't get big until they have a lot of users.
Yeah.
So they have to invest a lot of resources at the start to get people. And I think that's really where the right stuff also went wrong, is they tried to bring in people to get as many like women on the apps as possible at the start, and they weren't able to do that, and they just failed to reach critical mass. Also, all the women they talk to in conservative circles, like, I don't want to date conservative men. Ew.
Yeah, conservative men suck.
Yeah, so I'm interested. I don't know if this is the app, but I do think that the way they're approaching dating is helpful. I think I would like to see more apps like this, where, again, you can kind of hone in on the things you care about and not waste time talking with people who have dramatically different core values.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times you've gone on dates and guys have been like, so when are we having kids?
I don't want to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it?
That gives me so much.
Good stuff. I didn't get too much into this, but Peter Thiel, remember him? Weird conservative billionaire who was financing the right stuff. He injected several $1 million into that. It turns out he's sinking money into women's health, too.
What?
So he's helping fund a $200 million women's health investment vehicle focused on funding fertility care in foreign countries. According to Axios, it will focus on companies working in menstrual wellness, women's disease prevention, and international fertility medical tourism.
Medical tourism, fertility medical tourism. Is that for people coming to the U.S. to have children?
I don't fully understand it. I didn't dig too much into this again. But I wanted to bring this up because he's been investing heavily into women's startup apps, including $3.2 million into a women's health startup called 28, which tracks users' menstrual cycles and gives them tips on diet and exercise, all while encouraging them not to use birth control.
Yeah.
So not only is he creating this record of like women's periods,
Yeah.
which allows you to identify who's pregnant,
Yeah.
which has been used against women already
Yeah.
in prosecutions for abortions across the country, he also is pushing them to not use any form of hormonal birth control, which is a big thing the right has been leaning into. They're like, hormonal birth control sometimes has side effects. Therefore, you should have babies, right? Spend 18 years of your life because you got a rash once. It's good stuff. Good stuff. He's a cool dude, and I wish he was my dad. Anyways, let's move on to marriage trends, Naomi, because there is a lot going on in the world of marriage.
Okay.
You can get an AI wife now. No, I don't know if that's probably true, but I didn't look
I
into
just heard
that.
a news article about someone that married like an AI robot or something like that.
That's pretty attractive. I'm sorry, what? New York Times. New York Times, June 9th of this year, had an article titled What All the Single Ladies and Men Say About the Economy.
Oh.
A major jeweler claims that the pandemic may have prevented people from meeting their future fiancés, cutting demand for engagement rings. Inflation and anxiety among shoppers has not helped. This was written by Gianna Schmalak and Jason Carrianen. Carrianen? I don't even know how to pronounce that.
Carrianen. That's
Sure.
how I would say that.
Aftershocks from the coronavirus pandemic continue to rumble across the United States economy, and Signet Jewelers shared a surprising one this week. The company is selling fewer engagement rings this year because it says singles who were stuck at home during lockdowns failed to meet their would-be fiancés in 2020. As we predicted, there were fewer engagements in the quarter resulting from COVID's disruption of dating 3 years ago. Virginia C. Drosos, the chief executive at Signet, which owns K Jewelers and Zales, told investors on Thursday. Shares of Signet, the largest jewelry retailer in the United States, tumbled after the company cut its forecast for sales and profit for the rest of the year. In a way, the engagement ring has become a sparkly microcosm of the American economy. The bridal jewelry business has been buffeted by the delayed effects of the pandemic, rapid inflation that is squeezing consumers, and a growing sense of nervousness among shoppers. Some of the volatility is owed primarily to the pandemic. Weddings were canceled in droves during 2020 lockdowns, but bounced back starting in 2021 and throughout 2022, and were expected to level off over the coming years as more typical patterns returned. Wedding-related activity does appear to show some early signs of slowing in 2023, but it's unclear whether that's a result of a 2020 dating dry spell per Signet or simply return to the long-standing shift towards later and fewer marriages. What is clear? Wedding trends are also tied to broader and potentially longer-lasting economic forces. Signet may be selling less because fewer people are getting down on one knee, but also because ring shoppers are becoming more cautious and spending less amid rapid inflation and rising uncertainty about the direction of the economy. Both the volume and value of jewelry sold by Signet last quarter declined. Ms. Drosos said that the company had expected the low double-digit decline in engagements that we saw this quarter, but that other factors were at play. She cites recent consumer confidence, lower tax refunds, economic concerns triggered by regional bank failures, and continued inflation led to a weakening trend in spending across the jewelry industry. Consumers are also contending with big challenges. Prices have climbed about 15% cumulatively the past 3 years, as measured by the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index. Inflation has slowed in recent months, but many workers are finding that their wages are falling behind. Now, this isn't just rings. This also is wedding dress retailers. David's Bridal, a wedding dress retailer, suggested in the bankruptcy filing this year that some brides have become increasingly budget conscious. An increasing number of brides are opting for less traditional wedding attire, including thrift wedding dresses, James Markham, the company's chief executive, said in a court filing. Like much of the economy, the wedding industry has shown signs of a split, as higher earners find that they're able to reach into their savings and keep spending, and lower income families that spend a bigger share of their earnings on necessities like food begin to crack under the weight of inflation. Now, that is interesting because not every jewelry company has seen declines. LVMH, the luxury retail group that owns jewelers, including Tiffany, reported continued growth in early 2023, including solid sales of jewelry. Everybody was expecting 2023 to be a horrendous year for luxury in the United States. Jean-Jacques Guinaud, their chief financial officer, told investors in April, explaining that a collapse had not materialized. It's normalizing, but it's not bad either. That said, at mass market brands like Kay and Zales, shoppers may be starting to pull back. So higher price point items are selling okay.
Yeah.
Lower, more moderately priced stuff isn't selling as well because people who would normally purchase those things don't have as much disposable income. People with high incomes can continue to spend however they want. Signet is hoping wedding ring demand will bounce back, is predicting 500,000 more engagements from 2024 to 2026 than the pre-pandemic trend would suggest, as dating delayed by the lockdowns leads to matches. But analysts at Bank of America worry that some of the rebound will be offset by pinched consumer spending less on jewelry. Shane McMurray, founder of The Wedding Report, is skeptical of a big gap year in engagements. He expects weddings to fall 20% in 2023 from 2022 levels as trends return to normal. And Lyman Stone, director of research at the consulting firm Demographic Intelligence, argued that I am not doing good with words today, agreed the current slowdown in weddings might reflect a return to previous trends rather than a one-off weakening. It does look like 2023 is going to be a low year, he said. I do think that placing the blame for that on lockdowns in 2020 is a little bit strained.
So, interesting article. I think that it's odd that they're blaming it on the pandemic when so many other things are at play.
Well, the article notes that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, the vast majority of things that are associated with a wedding, like, you look up white dress versus wedding dress on anything, and it's marked up 3 times the value. So I think that the biggest thing is inflation, for one, which was caused by the pandemic. But I also think that the fact that a lot of people, when they lived through that pandemic, they're like, I don't need these things. I just want to be with the person that I love. Like, I just would like to have a nice, like, get together with a few friends, and that's it. Like, I don't need a huge fucking wedding.
I think that certainly plays a role. I was reminded this week, did you see what our vice president said about family emergency spending?
No.
Kamala Harris said something to the effect of the majority of Americans can't afford an emergency payment of $400, right? And this is based off of pretty consistent reporting of the last couple of years that people in America don't really have emergency savings. I think she was fact-checked and was actually like, oh, it's not the majority of Americans, it's only 40% of Americans couldn't afford a $400 emergency payment.
Yeah.
Which, given how often people need new windshields, new tires, emergency medical coverage, is a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But if 40% of people can't afford a $400 payment, how are they going to afford, say, a $3,500 engagement ring?
Yeah.
And I mention that because that's like the average price of an engagement ring if you factor out like all the insanely expensive ones that like rich people tend to buy that are, 50 carats and give you arthritis because your wrist hurts because you can't support it all day. I think people have less money. They have less flexibility with their money. I think people are more comfortable saying, hey, I want to be committed to someone, as you said, and don't need, a $100,000 ceremony in order to do that. I think there's still the desire, but I think desire can be tempered by the real world, and unfortunate reality is getting in the way, I think, of a lot of people's intentions. So there may be this bounce back, maybe not. I think not, because I have some more details to get into.
I think it's going to be more persistent for people to not buy traditional, like, traditional diamond rings, and move into, like, more lab-grown rocks, as well as, like, non-diamond rings.
I don't know, what percentage of rings sold in the United States are ethically, quote-unquote, grown versus mined by child slaves in the Congo.
Period.
I would hope that the trend has been leaning towards lab-grown, because lab-grown diamonds are bigger and cheaper and scratch-resistant, but some people just really like human suffering.
Yeah.
I think that this change in marriages might have some longer-term implications, and want to talk about a couple of other pieces of evidence that might support that hypothesis.
Let's do it.
So The Hill had an article on July 20th of this year by Miranda Nazaro. It says 2 in 5 young adults surveyed say that marriage is an outdated tradition. About 85% of respondents reported that they don't feel marriage is needed to have a fulfilling and committed relationship. Marriage expectations are changing among Gen Z and millennials, with 2 in 5 people surveyed stating that they believe marriage is an outdated tradition, according to a new survey from the Thriving Center of Psychology. What a good name! I want to work for the Thriving Center
of Psychology.
That's like a Gwyneth Paltrow brand. You want to buy like Goop from the Thriving Center? While the traditional ideas surrounding marriage may be shifting, 83% of respondents said that they would like to get married at some point.
Okay.
85%, though, also reported they don't feel marriage is needed to have a fulfilling and committed relationship. So here we have this interesting dichotomy where it's like, sure, I guess, but like, it's not the end all be all. I'd much prefer to like sit on my couch eating Doritos. I don't know. Like, that sounds pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
You don't even eat Doritos.
I do eat Doritos.
You do?
Doritos are great. Kroger now has a store brand that's
Yeah.
like knockoffs that I would argue even better than Doritos
Oh
and
my
cheaper.
God.
But I will say this, Doritos came out with a limited edition hot mustard flavor this summer, and
Yeah.
it was pretty baller.
Okay, all I'm saying is that Doritos do not need to be that expensive. I just bought Doritos last week, $5.99.
Oh my God, they're so expensive.
Yeah.
You can buy the powder online and make your own.
Really?
You shouldn't, because it's such a horribly long process, but you can. You can just dip your fingers in the powder and go to town.
Oh my God, yeah, and then just like have the same effect. I just eat a tortilla chip and then just lick my fingers. It would be the same thing.
Am I crazy, or would like it'd be really good if there was like an ice cream parlor where you could like sprinkle Doritos Crunch on top of like
It would
like
have to be really
Tajin?
specific flavors.
I think it'd go
but
good with
yes,
vanilla.
I think I like this.
Anyways, this is not a podcast about Doritos flavors.
It should be though.
We just have some ASMR of us crunching Doritos at the beginning of each episode.
This is good.
Yeah, I like the umami flavors. So over 1 in 6 people surveyed said that they do not plan on getting married, with 17% of millennials and 7% of Gen Z feeling this way. The report found the cost and current economy appear to be a barrier, with 73% stating that it is too expensive to get married. Now, certain cities see less married couples living together than others. Toledo, Ohio, Seattle, Spokane, Washington have the most unmarried couples living together, while Midwest cities of Minneapolis, Cleveland, Milwaukee, and Madison are all in the top 10 places with the least number of unmarried couples living together. So that's really interesting because, like, I don't know if Toledo's particularly expensive, but Spokane and Seattle definitely are. And so I'd be very fascinated kind of comparing the cost of housing in certain cities and seeing, how often people got together. Because I think if you're spending all your money on rent, it's much harder to buy that wedding dress. The report also found that over 3 in 5 unmarried couples live with their parents. That kind of surprised me, though more millennials live with their partner than Gen Z, a difference of 65% to 35%. As for what motivates couples to move in together, over half, 54%, said it was related to finances, not true love.
54%. Wow.
You think Weaver will have something like, I'm just looking for someone to help with rent. Please help me with rent.
No, I think it's just really interesting because when you like look at the psychology behind which couples stay together the longest, people that are forced into moving in together early without having it out of convenience, without having that conscious decision of, oh, we should move in together and having those conversations, are less likely to make it long term.
I mean, it wasn't like 54% of people said it was the primary reason. 85% of people responding said they moved in because they wanted to.
Yeah.
Right? It's just finances did play a role in that
Yeah.
decision. 60% of participants moved in together after dating a year or less. Nearly 1 in 5 share a bank account with the partner they live in, and around 1 in 6 share a credit card, although living costs aren't always
1
split
in
equal.
5?
Participants stating that they don't split their mortgage or rent equally.
Okay.
Yeah. 37% said they find their relationship is financially unequal. I don't think they had a lot of commentary about how they felt about that. It's just kind of like, yeah, my partner might make more than me. And, that sometimes sucks, sometimes is good. I don't know. While the numbers show over half of unmarried couples live with their parents, many participants, well, the numbers show over half of unmarried couples live with their partners, many participants still feel judged for their choices. 68% of people said they think it's intuitive to ask about marriage plans, while 77% said it's intrusive to ask about plans to have kids. Nearly a quarter of women felt judged for moving in with their significant other, with a disproportionate number of women, 69%, compared to the 27% of men. Over half, 58%, felt judged mostly by their mother.
Damn. Moms, come on, get it together.
The Thriving Center of Psychology surveyed 906 Gen Z and millennials who were in relationships but not married. 56% were millennials and 44% of the sample were Gen Z. The respondents were aged 18 to 42, average age of 29. Women accounted for 55% of respondents, 40% were men, and 5% were non-binary. 79% identified as straight, 17% as bisexual, which lines up with some of the stats we've seen about Gen Z and millennial people. 2% is gay and 2% is lesbian. And then to find the cities with the least married couples living together, the report used the 100 most populous cities with data from the U.S. Census Bureau on the number of unmarried partner households from 2021.
Wow.
So yeah, some big shakeups coming, because not only are people getting married less, they also feel less like they need to get married at the end of the day. It's the whole millennials are killing the wedding industry. And it's like, why would you spend like a down payment for a house on a single day?
And it's also like, what's the point if you can just go to the courthouse, get legally married, get the tax benefits, and you don't have this whole hubbub where you have to have all your relatives come in and then guilt you, and then you have to register and you have to put this whole event together. Like, I was talking to my friend who's currently planning a wedding, and she's having her wedding in September, and her wedding is, they originally were budgeted for 10 grand and she's at 13 now, and that's just the deposits.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting together in someone's backyard with like a bunch of catered barbecue sounds pretty good. Have a nice ceremony, maybe have a friend officiate.
I heard about this wedding a couple weeks ago that my friend went to, and she said that it was poorly planned and poorly executed because the night or a week before they were supposed to have this wedding, the groom went up to his mom and said, hey, I need you to make like 50 pounds of baked beans and 50 pounds of pulled pork, and I need you to make a bunch of coleslaw. And it was like, I get it, barbecue's great, but I wouldn't consider that a wedding food. And plus, you just told your mom a week before that you needed this all done for your wedding.
I mean, when I think of weddings, I'm not thinking of everyone in suits and fancy dresses. I want you to show up in like raggedy t-shirts and let's have like a crawfish boil or something.
Oh my God, I would totally have a crawfish boil at my wedding.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. No, do it on a picnic table.
Everyone has to change into overalls.
Oh, yes. Oh. Wedding dress underneath the overalls.
Wedding dress over? I don't know. Over or under? That's a good question. Anyways, Naomi and I are planning our respective weddings.
Yes.
Crawfish boils, barbecues. These are very cheap things.
These
that
are
definitely
mandatory.
won't get more expensive as the price of pulled pork
Crawfish
goes up.
is expensive. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. What's funny is, for those who don't know on the podcast, I identify as vegetarian.
Yeah.
And eat very, very little meat. Often it's because like it's meat that might not be eaten at a restaurant that someone else has ordered and left on their plate. I'm not picking, these are people at my table. I'm not picking stuff off. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I was looking at the crawfish restaurant in downtown Tempe on Mill Avenue.
Yeah.
They offer like crawfish by the pound. It's like, is there anything on the menu that I can eat?
Potatoes and corn.
Potatoes and corn, but you have to order minimum 1 pound of seafood in order to get. You cannot order just potatoes and corn off the menu. I can't even show up and like sit in the corner eating potatoes and corn.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make it
Damn.
difficult. They know who they want.
I'll eat the crawfish to your potatoes and corn.
That's really nice of you.
Yeah.
I'll have you fly in from wherever you're heading for your schooling.
I already told the I guess we're not really. We haven't talked.
We got to do an update episode.
Yeah.
Now, Naomi, not only are weddings becoming less common and people are less interested in them, the weddings that are being planned might be a little different moving forward.
Interesting.
Why do I say that?
I have no idea.
Well, the New York Times had an article published July 22nd of this year, updated on July 24th by Laura Pitcher. A wedding in 2025, it asks, not astrologically ideal for me. Social media is giving a lift to the centuries-old practice of looking to the stars to decide on the exact time, date, and location of a couple's big day. So the article talks about how astrology is playing a bigger and bigger role in people's lives, and that's now dictating when people are scheduling weddings. So they give an example of like one woman telling her partner that he needed to propose by May 2023. She had looked at like their astrological charts. She saw the beginnings of their relationship were based on astrological guidance. She timed their first date with a new moon in February 2021. So she used different charts, compared them, and said, oh, we need to go off the Scorpio moon in order to find a date that works. I'll say this, going off of astrological charts might be a really bad idea in Arizona, where it's 120 degrees out for most of the year now. So like, oh, well, our charts say we have to die and be baked alive in the Sonoran sun. It's very funny. So yeah, it's talking about how wedding charts are now a much more common thing. They're similar to birth charts, which are snapshots of the sky at the time, date, and place a person is born. But these take into account how the position of the sun, moon, and planets interact with one another to influence the person's life path and personality. So the idea is similar to a birth chart, you're now taking the combined birth charts of both of the partners and looking at places of like synergy that you can't, I don't even know how to explain this. This is so weird. You're looking at places where you can align your respective life,
charts,
energy, spiritual
sure.
path, whatever.
I feel like this is like a lot of work, and I would rather just like get married on a whim and get divorced if necessary in order to not do this work.
Okay, so this is like kind of complicated, and I really don't want to like overhype that this is becoming like the end-all be-all for weddings, but it's becoming shockingly common. Like I read this and I was like, okay, they interviewed 5 people. No, they have stats. So for centuries, astrology has played an important role in Indian weddings and arranged marriages, in which the bride and groom may be matched by an astrologer. In America, astrological wedding planning is now gaining popularity, coinciding with the rise of new age spirituality and wellness content on social media. According to a 2018 poll by Pew Research Center, 29% of Americans believe in astrology, up from 25% in 2009, which might be why so much viral wedding content on TikTok includes astrological wedding seating charts and the zodiacs as wedding dresses videos. The majority of the clients of this astrological wedding planner are women. They're asking primarily about good wedding dates and different aspects of like what they should do in their wedding. There's also looking at horoscopes to check compatibility for marriage. That's an Indian tradition. And there's an astrologer in Mumbai, India, named Sandeep Kochar, who says that often couples will come to him and ask for that information. And he says, marriages are made in the stars. Before falling in love, get your horoscopes checked. So Indian astrology is slightly different than American astrology, which is based on the moon sign, not the sun sign. Pair clients for marriage by approaching it as premarital counseling. So it's like, oh, well, Jupiter was in retrograde when you were born, so clearly you have to focus on how you talk to your partner. Look, man, I'm not making this up. This is a real thing. Astrologically speaking, some years are also better than others to have a wedding. So maybe all these delays are happening because people are like, oh no, 2023 is really bad. Jess Campbell, an astrologer who runs the Spicy Gemini Memes account on Instagram, delayed getting married in 2021 because she wasn't seeing any great astrology. She ended up picking a wedding date in October 2022 as Venus, the planet of love, is harmonious during the early Libran dates of the month.
So this means that like she is going to have a better marriage because of it, or she's just going to be more compatible with her partner?
I think she's going to feel better about the marriage. Here's the thing, like, we never did that episode, and we still can do it, about, like, all the different ways people, like, approach finding partners, including, like, astrological signs and symbols. For the most part, I'm like, it doesn't hurt. It's not a big deal. If this, like, gives you some way to, like, filter through people, and you're not, like, being arbitrarily racist or sexist or whatever, yeah, sure, whatever. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
The thing is, the Pew Research Center did this survey where they like asked people about their astrological beliefs. And I'm not sure if like when people were responding, 29% responding, they're like, I believe in astrology as like, I think it's a real thing and I like look to it and occasionally do like a tarot reading for guidance, or like my entire life is based around this. And the reason I say that is because I threw in some of the stats they found.
Okay.
So the chart they produced from this study in 2018 was women are more likely than men to affirm New Age beliefs. So they asked, do you believe spiritual energy can be located in physical things? 37% of men said yes, 46% of women said yes. Do you believe in psychics? 34% of men said yes, 47% of women said yes. Do you believe in reincarnation? 27% of men said yes, 39% of women said yes. Do you believe in astrology? 20% of men said yes, 37% of women. They also said believe in at least one of these things. So 55% of men believe in at least one of those things. 69% of women believe in at least one of those things, if not more.
Yeah.
It was also interesting because you become less likely to believe in reincarnation or astrology if you are a college graduate compared to someone with high school or less education.
Interesting.
Interestingly, you are more likely to believe in psychics, reincarnation, and astrology if you are Black and Hispanic than if you are white. And the stats are interesting for psychics. 39% of Republicans believe in psychics compared to 41% of Democrats. But reincarnation is quite split. 26% of Republicans believe in reincarnation versus 38% of Democrats, and 24% of Republicans believe in astrology versus 32% of Democrats.
So in the very least, picking your astrology wedding date, let's just say, at the very least would just be considered placebo.
I guess, like, I don't think it's going to hurt unless, of course, that date
Yeah.
is at 120 degrees in the middle of August
Yeah.
in Phoenix, Arizona. I think it's going to make people feel better, but I can't help but wonder, like, how much of their lives is dictated by this if
Yeah.
they're planning, their big date around that. I also wonder how much people are going to lean into this when they're upping the costs for weddings. So if the astrological charts all say October is a good time to get married because Venus is near the Libran constellation or whatever, the price for weddings in October is going to skyrocket as like
Yeah.
event venues get booked up rapidly and everyone's trying to get in.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you've just shook up a bottle of champagne and everyone's trying to like get through the entrance,
Yeah.
but the entrance is blocked off by the fact that there's like a physical limitation on the number of weddings
Yeah.
that can be hosted in specific months. So I'm fascinating in how that's going to pan out. But yeah, this probably plays a role. I'm not going to pretend like, again, these people like live their entire lives, but I can't help but wonder how common these views are, because I see some weird ass videos on social media these days where
Yeah.
people express the most bananas beliefs, and I'm like, oh yeah, these people live in our society too.
I'm fine if your beliefs are different than mine. I'm not fine if they are shitty and are encumbering on other people's well-being.
That's fair.
That's where I draw the line.
My opinions are all shitty and infringe on people's well-being.
Okay.
That's a big part of my
Go off,
personality.
King.
Thank you. Now, I also don't want to overhype this, but I do think this change in marriage is not a completely Western thing.
Okay.
Like, our podcast touches upon other countries at times, but like we primarily focus on like the West because that's what we're aware of. That's where we can find research. That's where, we have evidence and personal experience we can draw from. But this is something that's spreading across the entire world. Maybe it's because Chinese people are more likely to believe in astrology. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But there has been a change in marriage rates in China as well as the West. So July 10th, 2023, Why China's Young People Are Not Getting Married. This was an article in the New York Times by Nicole Hong and Zixu Wang. Now, I'm going to skip past part of this, everything that's highlighted in the outline, and get to the meat. And we'll talk about the highlighted stuff in a moment. So the number of marriages in China declined for 9 consecutive years, falling by half in less than a decade. Last year, about 6.8 million couples registered for marriage, the lowest since records began in 1986, down from 13.5 million in 2013.
Oh, dear Lord.
Yeah, it's been cut in half
Yeah.
in 10 years. That was government data that was released last month. Though maybe they're waiting for a better year when Mars is
In retrograde.
in retrograde.
Is in Gatorade.
I'm picturing that scene from Men in Black. You saw the first Men in Black
Yeah.
film where they're trying to explain like to people what happened and that it wasn't aliens. They're like, oh, there was a reflection of swamp gas off of Jupiter. So the numbers have risen so far in 2023 compared to the year before, but more marriages are ending too. In the first quarter of this year, 40,000 more couples married compared to the same period a year earlier, while divorces rose by 127,000. As women in cities achieve new levels of financial independence and education, marriage is less of an economic necessity to them. And men say they cannot afford to get married, citing cultural pressure to own a home and a car before they can even begin dating. The instability of the last 3 years have compounded these pressures, reshaping many young people's expectations about building a family. China has imposed an increasingly tight grip over every aspect of society under its leader, Xi Jinping, with effects that could weigh in on the marriage rate. If young people are not confident about the future, it's very difficult for them to think about settling down and getting married. In China, where it is extremely rare for an unmarried couple or a single person to have children, the marriage decline is tied to the country's falling birth rate. Last year, China's population shrank for the first time since the early 1960s, when there was a widespread famine. The ruling Communist Party has engaged in a propaganda campaign to urge people to get married and have babies, even holding state-sponsored dating events. The government is testing programs in 20 cities to promote a new era of marriage. One tenet of the new era is that husbands and wives should share child-rearing responsibilities, an acknowledgement that women in China have traditionally carried an unequal burden. A local government in eastern China also started a matchmaking app. Now, that all might play a role, but there's other stuff going on in Chinese society. Last month, the subject of marriage was a hot topic online after a widespread circulation of a video on Weibo, China's version of Twitter, that showed a man killing his wife by repeatedly driving over her with his car after a domestic dispute.
What the fuck?
Many of those commenting warned women against getting married. A recent Rebo hashtag about rejecting marriage generated 92 million views, with commenters citing the lack of protections for women in China's divorce and domestic violence laws. The share of women aged 25 to 29 in urban China who have never been married rose to 40.6% in 2020 from 8.6% in 2000. 5-time increase.
Yeah.
20 years. According to an analysis by Wang Feng, a professor of sociology at the University of California, Irvine. Many men say they're delaying marriage because they feel economically insecure. Because of a cultural preference for boys during the government's one-child policy, which ended in 2016, China has around 35 million more men than women, feeling a sense of economic competition for marriage. Zhu Ji, 30, left a job at a multinational tech company for a state-owned enterprise this year. He wanted more job security, even though he took a 50% pay cut and now makes about $28,000 a year. After the switch, he feels ready to propose to his girlfriend, but says they do not plan to have children because the cost is too daunting. He said many people feel poor despite China becoming more prosperous, a sentiment that will inevitably affect workers' attitudes towards marriage. Adjusted for per capita economic output, China is the second most expensive country in the world to raise a child behind South Korea, according to Chinese demographers. At this moment, I'm still looking for stability and seeing what's going on with the economy, says Mr. Zhu. So that is the New York Times coverage of what is going on in China. You can see a lot of similarities to some of the trends discussed in that article about rings and wedding dresses in America.
Yeah.
Now, what I didn't read was all of the highlighted stuff, where the New York Times' desire to portray China as this evil communist regime is sort of like shown in full force.
Yeah.
Because even though it seems Chinese people are dealing with like basically the same stuff as Americans, New York Times did not paint like the American picture as like, oh, the ruling Democratic Party regime has like failed to provide opportunities for like young people, or like the ruling regime in America has made it increasingly difficult for childcare and like hasn't allowed women, the ability to be independent.
Yeah.
They only portray this as something uniquely Asian. So like, they describe some of the obstacles facing Chinese adults as draconian coronavirus restrictions, which, prevented the adults from dying. So who's to say if that was good or bad? They cite a couple of people who are like, oh, I couldn't date because the government prevented me from being able to move throughout the country. They say that young people are deterred by the toll of putting a child through China's cutthroat education system. They describe the instability of life in China and how like you can't trust anything these days. There's uncertainty because lockdowns trapped people in their dorms during COVID. There were lost educational opportunities. It's fascinating to me because the New York Times wants to portray the government of China as like this uniquely evil thing that's ruining relationships, when it seems like they took a pretty rational approach to COVID and prevented a vast chunk of their country from dying. And now the same impacts that young people are seeing everywhere are occurring. And they're like, well, clearly this means we must destroy the evil Chinese.
Yep.
Now, I say this not just because of this one article. I'm increasingly seeing articles that are like, we're going to have a war with China any day now. Are you excited? And like every Republican in Congress is talking about like how we're going to counter the Chinese threat. And the Chinese threat is like them producing a lot of stuff because we outsourced all of our business there.
Yeah.
Not they are trying to murder us, but we're like, oh, we should nuclear bomb them into oblivion. And that's really terrifying and really bad. And we should call out rhetoric that amplifies this idea that the Chinese are different and weird and deserve to be murdered. But yeah, I guess the greater point here is the same trends impacting marriage in the United States are happening all over the world. And demographically, we should probably expect a very large decline in our population in the next couple of years. Both, due to things like climate change, but also just for the simple fact that people aren't in relationships. And it's going to be increasingly difficult to be able to support a child and raise a child in our very interesting Mad Max-like coming world.
Yeah.
Anyways, dating in 2023, them's the updates.
Yep. Super exciting.
Anything we want to talk about before we wrap this one up?
I know this is weird. It's our last one here.
I have an upset tummy.
Yeah, are you okay?
I'm feeling better. I don't think the nuclear radiation soda helped.
Yeah, I don't think that you should have had the second sip.
Genuinely, we could just pour it down the drain.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And clean the drain.
Yeah, probably.
Get all the scrub marks off.
Yeah.
People listening, we deeply appreciate you listening to our horrible podcast since May of 2021. Good Lord.
Dear God.
Yeah. Thank you for supporting us, whether by talking about us to your friends, following us on social media, or giving money to our Patreon. Speaking of which, we'd love it if you joined our Patreon. Behind the scenes stuff, cool stickers,
Joel
a map
singing
of
Frank
dating
Sinatra
stuff.
while I'm peeing in the background.
Yeah, that'll stay in. All sorts of interesting stuff on our Patreon, early access to episodes, and all of our money currently goes to supporting the causes we care about. We do not make money off this. This is a expensive hobby masquerading as a legitimate business.
And we love it.
Come at us, IRS. So yeah, please come and support us. We would love to have you. We will write you a nice holiday card at the end of the year, which is coming up soon.
Yeah.
I got some big plans.
Ooh.
Yeah, and Naomi, I know we have our map right now of things to do in Phoenix, and I fully expect you come up with a list of things to do in San Diego.
Oh, of course.
And tell all of our listeners all the hot places to go and date and
God, I can't wait to talk about dating trends in San Diego.
meet people on the Soon app in San Diego.
That's in San Francisco
Or
only.
like Soon Diego.
Okay, that you did literally just talked about how it's only in San Francisco right now.
No, they're spreading.
Yeah, I
Look at
know.
Palo
Very
Alto.
slowly.
Yeah, Palo Alto is basically San Diego.
No.
They're next door to each other.
Oh my God. Get a map.
You know what was a great movie? Palo Alto with James Franco, where he played a
Okay.
creepy sex pervert teacher.
We love you, listeners. End of an era. Hashtag end of an era.
Like us, hit that, smash that follow button, give us the hashtag into the era.
No, it's the, if you like and subscribe if you haven't already.
Okay, make sure you tag us with Eras Tour. That's a unique thing we came up with. We do plan to go on tour in a mock-up of our shitty dining room.
Oh, damn, you're right. That would be so fun. We just like open up like the side of an RV and people can just come and watch our live show.
And of course, we'll be talking with Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
She's our next guest.
T Swift is our next gift.
Is she the one who did the Eras Tour?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad this reference makes sense.
Joel, let's go eat some Doritos.
Let's go eat some Doritos. Bye for now, y'all.
Bye.
We have many thanks for the use of our theme music, which is the song Drop by Ketsa. You can find more of their music online at ketsa.uk. You can also find Date These Guys online on Twitter and Instagram at @DateTheseGuys or visit datetheseguys.org. If you have questions for the podcast or want to be a wealthy sugar parent, please send an email to datetheseguys@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our work, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/datetheseguys. We have behind-the-scenes information, early episode access, participation in polls, and exclusive access to a guy sibling map of date ideas for the Arizona area. Since the world sucks right now, we are currently donating all Patreon proceeds to trans organizations like the Trevor Project, a trans suicide prevention organization, and moving assistance funds for those fleeing states outlawing their very existence. Please consider becoming a member and supporting our work today.